We can now continue our lectures. I promised that we would return to a recent topic. As an example, I will cite the implementation of this Ataturk program. However, in fact, today I will talk more about self-determination. What does self-determination mean? It may even be surprising. Internationally recognized, accepted principle. And everyone is constantly talking about it. But I noticed that this is not the case. Most people barely understand what self-determination means. And the implementation of Ataturk's program is probably the best example based on which one can try to explain what self-determination means. First of all, I'll give you a few theoretical provisions so that the example will be more clear later on. What does self-determination mean? And what role does it play in the life of a person and the people? Self-determination is a choice in a moment of uncertainty. A person can choose uncertainty, and people can choose that as well. What do they choose? In short, it's the strategy. They choose the strategy. The goal is to define values, principles, and the work style. It turns into a subject. And whenever this choice is made, people become a new subject, a new cell. What it was before, I do not know. It's the story of that very cell that turns out to be the start and the end of human life. If it happens, it means that the history of both the people and the individual and the environment is already being created, because the self-determined subject enters into relations in the environment where he made this choice. With phenomena, items, etc., these relationships will fast change into connections between some items and people and thus create some circumstances. And it is here that the subject starts to develop. And its relationship with the environment. What universal things are there? It's the most critical. How does it develop? With the help of what the self-determined person or people is developed. Naturally, thanks to this very relationship. And what happens next? The most important thing here is that when a new cell is created, the environment immediately attacks it. Because the environment sees something new. There wasn't anything like that, and suddenly a new entity appears in this environment that declares that whatever they choose declares. As it is said, the Declaration of Independence. Where did it come from? It is this declaration that is the form when a new self-determined entity confirms it. Says that this is my right, I am so, my goals are such, and I will do everything to protect my rights. And he gets hit for it. Who are you? Where did you come from? This is a very important thing. The second thing is power. How does this subject consist in? Where does this power come from? Obviously, from the environment. From the very beginning, when you have nothing. Then comes a moment when you create yourself. This blow and the source of this force, in fact, difficult to understand, often leads to people retreating. On the contrary, they do not want to self-define. They want to take some concerted action. Most people are like that. In the future, when we talk about politics, about Armenia, I'll bring similar examples to show how people run, do not want to self-define and act as a subject. On the contrary, talk to him, talk to them, coordinate. If there's no need, don't act. Do you feel what a significant difference this can make? But this self-determined subject does not work like that. He creates relationships on a par with anyone, realizing that they will hit. But where does the power come from? When they hit you, You resist, and after a certain moment, the environment itself decomposes, and the desire to hit you down disappears. Because some of the subject prefer getting into a relationship and using the later against each other. World based on interests, right? Interests begin to get divided. And when they divide, a balance of power is already being created, a balance of forces. And for now, even if 10 people want to hit you, 5 of them will shout, "Stop," and take your hand. It's profitable. That's what self-determination is. It must be explained. In fact, it is why I say it is difficult for people to understand, because really, this logic is very difficult to understand, especially if you're self-determined for the first time. Before to get to the main point, I'll provide an example. Many of you know Catalonia, which had a referendum and proclaimed independence. They aspired to be free of Spain. Naturally, from the day you declare that you're an independent state, Spain is already your neighbor. They haven't realized that yet. They haven't realized that they will get hit. And whenever Spain told them to stop, I'll suppress. The leaders immediately fled to Brussels. The end. It just sat and didn't even hit. But if it had, the whole of Europe would have condemned Spain, wouldn't it? They would surely declare the issues must be solved peacefully, and they would get independent developed. This is a very vivid example of that. The Kurds also had it like that, at the same time. And now, let's move on to this Ataturk program. The Ottoman Empire loses the war. On October 30th, 1918, an armistice was signed in the city of Mudros. The Ottoman Empire has lost the war. As in March of the same year, an agreement with Russia was concluded in the famous Brest-Litovsk. But in the end, it just lost. The British entered the capital Constantinople in November. They occupied it. The Sultan is offered to work with them. What should the Sultan do, at least to save his power? The start point is December. The parliament is dissolved, organizations, parties. That is, they dissolve the state as well. The British take control of the police. To such an extent, completely. The process continues, but what is very interesting is Greece invades Smyrna. They want to invade, take it. And the others followed them too. And the program of completely dissolving the country, the empire, comes out. Everyone knows brilliantly. I don't want these stories a lot, these familiar maps that have already come in the 20s. We do all day speak about the plans that they submitted in Sèvres and wanted to make the Sultan the guilty one. He signed everything he was given to. It suggested that all members of the anti-German alliance, primarily Britain, France, and Greece, had already worked out and agreed on something. These famous stories about Sèvres and so on, and they're still being told, you know. There were many post-war contracts with Germany separately, with the Ottomans separately, with the Russians separately. Everything has become a reality. Interesting, right? Only the one that would separate hasn't become a reality. Thanks to what? It is thanks to this that these people have become self-determined. The last time I said that to self-define, even the Ottomans created a new nation, the Turks. See how deep the process is to mobilize. And who implements it? Here's this General Kemal Ataturk, called like this later on, who knew brilliantly what it means. The British, of course, were preoccupied with the issues of the army to dissolve it. It has decided that the Ottoman army would be dissolved. And this is in the case of occupation. Greece has entered. Then General Kemal refuses to do it and thinks about the following. He goes to the country's eastern part, This was already a map of modern Turkey, but I'm showing them just to mark these cities. He goes, crosses the central part of the country, the east, and makes a statement. It turns out to become the so-called Amasya statement. Circular, or I don't know what they call it. The statement declares the country is in danger and we urge everyone to unite. After that, he goes to the city of Erzurum, gathers representatives of the Ottoman Empire's 6 vilayets, and says we must hold a conference, a national one. There are occupants sitting there and the Sultan has betrayed on us, etc., and so on and so forth. We do it like this. Look, it turns out to be the center of authorities. In the end, he says that they should go to Sivas. They call it like that now and then. And we are organizing a conference in Sebastia. What are they doing there? Well, explanations, speeches at their place, but most importantly, they create a national committee or a commission. That's very interesting. They have already created a circle and said that this is the only government of the Ottoman Empire. There are no others. We don't recognize them. Naturally, the Sultan starts his activity immediately. They need to catch him, the British force. We have to arrest him, but it's already too late. When I will tell you what kind of hit it was later, but already what was illegal, the Sultan did. And it was quite interesting how Ataturk behaved with neighbors. He told different things to the Islam world. Since the Sultan was the caliph throughout the Islamic world, we work with the Sultan, and he does this. And with its people, he was saying that he needed to be arrested. He had betrayed them, and the enemy had already dropped the Turkish word. The Osman dog. He wants to oppress us. Ideologically, it's what he put inside. I talked about it last time, and the process has started. Until the end of the year, there was this process and confrontation. At the end of the year, in 1919, new elections to the Ottoman parliament were organized. In these new elections, Ataturk supporters won, taking the majority. And from here, the events of the 1920s begin. It kind of amazes me. Having received the majority on January 28th, they accepted the national vow, that is, the Declaration of Independence. The center of power in the center, in the capital, they accepted it. What is the essence of this? They've defined the parameters of their future state. They said that where the Islamist Turks live, and they have already called them Turks, this is ours. We give the Arab world the right to make plebiscite, to decide. The territory was occupied, at least it wasn't theirs. And the most interesting thing is that a plebiscite was also supposed to be held in Kars, Ardahan, Batumi. They've clarified the entire strategy. But for what? Because they, the majority of Turks, wanted to legalize that these people are plebiscites and are part of this country. Here comes the blow. The British aggressively enter the country and begin to arrest. They're already called nationalists. And these nationalist deputies are being arrested, members of the government. They're already serious, they get it. The parliament, of course, is not there either. There isn't a parliament. There just isn't. It's March 16th. Here, he took another important step, founding the parliament on March 16th, 1920. He chose with a large national assembly and declares this right, and if someone doesn't accept its legitimacy, we will shoot them. With the help of the Sultan, the British said that he should be shot. They've already reached full conformism. But already in the state, you see, the dual authorities are obvious. What are they doing? They fight. It's 1920. The famous story of Lenin. A very interesting step, you see. He creates a relationship with the environment. He appeals to Lenin to help with weapons and, in addition, to work with Greece. Russians agree and they recognize the power of the Bolsheviks. Not recognized yet, right? It's just movement, and movement gets recognized. For them, it was an actual thing, and Lenin also sets a condition to help besides recognizing. Ataturk takes upon himself the obligation to make it easy for the Russians to enter Baku, to approve the Soviet order. Look what he did. And all Muslims were called upon, Russia did, to work in order to obey the Bolsheviks. There was a war between the White Guard and the Red Guard, right? Look at what commitments they have made. And to smash Armenia, that is, Russia has set a condition that Armenia should be smashed, because Armenia is forced, we'll talk about it later, working with the White Guards, with Denikin. They were far. After Rostov, the White Guard was an authority. That's it. You don't have a way, you have nothing. What you do with them. You see what the situation is. Therefore, they took the commitment and the weapons which were given to them. They used against Armenia at the end of the 20s, basically 1920. This is what already led to the Alexanderpol Treaty, capitulation. This is what they've done. And what started, you will see from the theoretical part. As soon as they started working with the United Bolsheviks, and the Bolsheviks defeated in Russia, Britain, Italy, and France already realized that they had to change their attitude and began working separately with the Ataturk movement. And this united bloc has been destroyed. Everyone wanted to get something more, work with them, and so on. The war was over. Already signed in Mudanya in 1922, signed by this famous statement in Mudanya, the war ended with armistice. And it's already recognized. Already the empire is self-destructed. There's no caliphate. We have talked about this. And the state consists in power. Look where it came from. A classic example that needs to be understood, because other figures of that time, such as Shahan Natali, said the only people were Turks in the Ottoman Empire who understood that it was necessary to create a nation and a state. The rest of the nation did not understand that. All lost or were killed. Someone understood and didn't get noticed. Interestingly, there are British documents that they didn't notice either. The ambassador even cannot understand from the very beginning. They even report that they are nationalists, and so on and so forth. And they realized this complicated process too late. And Britain hit late in the 1920s, as I said, they then realized what they needed to deal with. Our leaders at that time even complained how they hadn't noticed the monster was growing up. Later on, they thought if they had seen, they would have spoken with him. Again, they didn't get it. With whom should you speak? They had an agreement with Lenin to destroy you. See how difficult it is. But at least it's a very good example. I would suggest that this example be well prepared and studied in the universities, because there are very few classical examples that have achieved success. And even more, most people cannot go ahead and they move back from half and run away from half. But this is one successful example, and that's why it's interesting. A long time ago, people thought about this phenomenon, the essence of self-determination and power. Where does the power come from? And one very interesting thing that I found at the time is the spirit that creates itself comes out on the way of the ruling forces of the world. It's almost incomprehensible, but this is the logic about which I told you about. If you are a subject and you create yourself, it turns out you are already on the right wave which leads you forward. Later on, I'll talk about the self-determination of Artsakh, about the self-determination of the Armenian people as a whole since 1988, where the same truth worked out. Then we followed the Russian perestroika. Here on this wave of reconstruction, we went out and got this power. We'll talk about this later. This famous monument is a monument of the Republic, or say, the creators of Turkey. Here's Ataturk, along with the Russian ambassador, Araov. Then a Russian, or as they say, Frunze. This is nothing obvious. But it doesn't matter. That is, this country is a single project. So we had to admit that this statue was done for that purpose. Do you get how it works? United. After which, and we've discussed this, they were forced to change their positions. I've talked about British politics, but look at how reality is being created all the time. Who did Britain work with? Britain worked with Sultan. The Bolsheviks worked with the movement that won, and in the end, everyone recognized the latter. And they refused, don't they? These people were forced to renounce the severed treaty. When they've gathered, everyone has already refused it. He forced everyone to change positions. And it's not for nothing that this man or this Ataturk had a mausoleum. He, just one man, managed to create a nation and a state. And he's like a god for them. Why? Because he understood what self-determination meant. He understood how you achieve sovereignty, self-determination. By ideally understanding it and applying the balance of power, this person made the whole world reckon with them, destroy all these projects, and become allies. Later, they became allies, right? Immediately after World War II. And naturally, we should talk about how the Armenians showed themselves in the same years and where our unluckiness comes from. I can already say that the Armenians had no consciousness about what self-determination means. They just don't. Absolutely. That's what is difficult. I do not know, man, how to speak now. Many people simply don't like it. And there are people on Facebook that write to me why I speak like Turks have got it better than us. Looking at the whole row, I also gave in the Middle Ages, right, how difficult everything is with us. Having such a powerful cultural talent, we are so hard in the political sphere. People don't like this, but it doesn't work out like that. We must understand well so that we can see our current problems. In fact, everything is done for the present.